My dad signed over the company to my golden boy brother at his 60th birthday party. The next day, I walked away and built a rival empire that crushed them. I've been on Reddit for years, reading stories like this one, and I never thought I'd have one to share. But after what happened last month, I need to get this off my chest. It's been eating me alive. I'm 34 now, and this whole situation started when I was a kid, but it really blew up about 2 years ago. To understand how it all came to this, you have to understand my family's messy dynamic. My father, Robert, is 62 and owns Harrington and Sons, a mid-sized construction company he started from scratch in the 1980s. It grew to a crew of about 50, taking on commercial and residential projects across 3 counties. Growing up, that business was everything to us. Every single dinner conversation was about jobs, contracts, which teams were doing well, and which suppliers were giving us the best deals. My younger brother Ryan, who is now 29, and I were always part of the plan. "I've been building this since you boys could walk," Dad would say, usually while looking over blueprints on our kitchen table. "One day, you're going to take over this empire I built. Harrington and Sons is going to be your legacy." But that's where things went wrong. Early on, Dad decided Ryan was the true builder, and I was just a problem he'd have to deal with. Ryan was one of those kids who was good at every sport. He was a high school star athlete and was fixing engines by the time he was 14. He had this natural charisma that everyone loved. Dad was all over it. "Look at Ryan," he'd brag to anyone who would listen. "That kid's got natural leadership. He was born for this business." Meanwhile, I was the one paying attention in school, studying business management, cost estimation, and getting certified in project management software. I spent my summers working on Dad's job sites, but instead of being praised for understanding the technical side of the business, I was criticized for not being hands-on enough. The breaking point came when I was 19 and suggested Dad modernize our processes. It was 2009, and he was still doing everything on paper: estimates, schedules, payroll, and inventory. It was a complete nightmare. I found construction management, software that could streamline everything, save money, and get rid of errors. Dad's response was classic. "Real builders don't need computers, son. We build things with our hands, not by staring at screens all day." Ryan, who was 14 and barely knew which end of a hammer to hold, just nodded along like he knew anything about running a company. "Yeah, Mark. Construction is about getting dirty, not playing with gadgets." That became the theme of my life. Every time I tried to bring modern business practices into the company, I was told I was overthinking it or making it too complicated. Dad once said, "College is fine, son, but this is the real world. You can't learn construction from a textbook." Ryan, on the other hand, dropped out of community college after 1 semester because he didn't like it. Dad's reaction? "Good for you, son. Real men learn by doing." I kept working for Dad through college and after graduation, hoping he'd eventually realize that I understood the business better than anyone else. On my own time, I reorganized our filing systems, set up proper project costing methods, and even built a simple database to track equipment maintenance. But at every family event, company barbecue, and supplier meeting, it was the same story. Ryan was the golden boy who truly got the building business. I was just Mark, the guy who was good at paperwork. The favoritism was insane. Ryan would show up to job sites late, spend half the day on his phone, and then leave early for some party or date. Dad would just laugh and say, "Boys will be boys." Meanwhile, I'd put in 60-hour weeks, solve logistical problems, negotiate lower material costs, and get a shrug at best. When Ryan turned 21, Dad started talking about a succession plan, but not with me. I found out about the conversations by overhearing my mom on the phone with her sister. Apparently, Dad was already planning to give Ryan more power, even though Ryan had never managed anything more complex than a 7-person framing crew. I tried to talk to Dad about it directly about 3 years ago when I was 31 and had been with the company for over a decade. I had just finished our biggest commercial. contract ever, a $2.3 million office complex that came in under budget and ahead of schedule. Dad, I started one day during a break, I think we need to talk about the future of the company. I've got ideas about expansion, maybe getting into some specialty niches. I've been doing a lot of research. He cut me off. Mark, you do good work. Don't get me wrong. But running this company takes a different kind of man than you are. I wasn't ready for that. What do you mean? Construction is a tough business. You need someone who can command respect from the crews. Someone who understands what it means to get his hands dirty. Ryan's got that natural authority. Men follow him. Dad, I've been on site since I was 16. I know every part of this business. Knowing and leading are two different things, son. Ryan's got what it takes to be the boss. You're more of a support guy. Nothing wrong with that. Every good leader needs someone to handle the details. That conversation haunted me for months. A support guy. After everything I had done, all the changes I made, all the money I saved the company, I was just the support guy. But the real gut punch came 2 years ago at Dad's 60th birthday party. He had reserved the back room at this steakhouse and invited the whole extended family, key employees, and our most important clients. I thought it was just a birthday dinner. I was wrong. About halfway through dinner, Dad stood up and tapped his glass. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. Turning 60 has me thinking about the future, about legacy, about what kind of company I want to leave behind. My stomach started to churn. I knew exactly where this was going. Harrington & Sons has been my life's work, Dad continued. But a man's got to know when it's time to pass the torch. That's why I'm proud to announce that Ryan Harrington will be taking over as president of Harrington & Sons, effective immediately. The crowd gave a standing ovation. Ryan jumped up, grinning like he'd just won the lottery, and hugged his dad. Mom was crying happy tears. I just sat there, watching my entire future being handed to my younger brother in front of 40 people. Ryan gave a little speech about carrying on the Harrington legacy and moving the company forward while maintaining traditional values. It was completely off. The kid couldn't tell the difference between gross margin and markup if his life depended on it. But everyone ate it up. After the crowd cleared out, I cornered Dad in the parking lot. "What the hell was that?" I demanded. "You didn't even talk to me about this. I've worked for this company for 15 years. Dad sighed as if I was being ridiculous. "Mark, I told you, Ryan's the right man for the job. He's got the personality for it, the leadership skills. The crews need someone they respect." "Respect, Dad? Half our guys have been asking me for technical advice since they started. I'm the one who—" "You're good at the technical stuff. I've never said you weren't. But running a construction company isn't about spreadsheets and computers. It's about being tough, making hard decisions, and commanding respect." I laughed, but there was nothing funny about it. Natural authority? Ryan's never managed a budget over $50,000. He doesn't know our insurance requirements. He's never dealt with permitting issues. He couldn't read a complex blueprint if you gave him a week. His face hardened. "Son, I'm going to say this once. Ryan is the future of this company because he's man enough to handle it. Some people are born leaders and some are born followers. There's no shame in knowing which one you are." When he said those words, everything changed for me. "You've never been man enough to run this business, Mark. You're too soft, too academic, too worried about everyone's feelings. Ryan's got the balls to make the tough calls. That's what it takes." I stood there in that parking lot, watching my father walk away from me as if I were just another disappointed employee instead of his son. That night, I made a life-changing decision. If I wasn't man enough to lead Harrington & Sons, I'd show my true strength by building something better. The next morning, I walked into Dad's office and resigned. "You're making a mistake, son," he said without looking up from his paperwork. "Where are you going to go? You've never worked anywhere else." I didn't reply. "Don't worry about me, Dad. I'll figure it out." What Dad didn't know, what no one in my family knew, was that I had been quietly preparing for this for months. I stayed late at the office on my own time and documented everything: client lists, supplier relationships, pricing strategies, and project procedures. I had been putting together a full picture of how Harrington and Sons operated, what our competitive advantages were, and most importantly, where we fell short. I had also been networking. Construction is a relationship business, and over 15 years, I had built solid relationships with subcontractors, suppliers, and even certain clients. People respected my work, valued my attention to detail, and trusted my word. Dad always thought Ryan's backslapping style was important, but most of our repeat business came from clients who knew I'd personally oversee their projects. Within a week of leaving, I had filed the paperwork to start Pinnacle Construction Solutions. I chose the name Pinnacle deliberately to suggest we were the peak of quality and professionalism. Construction Solutions meant we solved problems, not just threw muscle at them. I started small, using my savings to rent a tiny office in a nearby business park, buying some basic equipment, and hiring 2 people I'd worked with at Harrington and Sons who were tired of Ryan's terrible management. My first contract was for a small $15,000 home remodel, which I could mostly do myself. But I had bigger plans. One of Harrington and Sons' biggest weaknesses was a lack of tech. Dad's old-school ways made them incredibly inefficient. I'd spent years watching us lose money on projects because of bad scheduling, poor cost tracking, and miscommunication between the office and the field. I invested heavily in construction management software, project tracking systems, and mobile technology for field teams. While Harrington and Sons were still using paper timesheets and handwritten change orders, my crew had tablets that let them look at blueprints, submit daily reports, track material use, and communicate instantly with the office. The efficiency gains were incredible. I could bid on jobs more accurately because I had real-time cost data. Better communication let me catch problems before they became expensive disasters. I could schedule more efficiently because I knew exactly where my teams were and what they were working on. Most importantly, I could show clients exactly what they were paying for. While Harrington and Sons were still giving rough estimates based on experience, I was able to provide detailed breakdowns of how every dollar would be spent. My second contract was a $40,000 kitchen remodel, followed by a $75,000 bathroom renovation. Word started to get out about a new construction company that finished projects on time and on budget. I also went after the commercial market, which Dad had always struggled with. He was great at residential and small commercial jobs, but anything that required complex coordination or strict legal compliance made him anxious. I positioned Pinnacle as the company that could handle intricate projects like medical facilities, schools, and anything else that needed specialized knowledge. 6 months after starting Pinnacle, I landed my first major commercial contract, a $400,000 renovation of a medical office building. It was exactly the kind of job Harrington and Sons would have struggled with. Lots of regulatory requirements, tight deadlines, and no room for errors. I crushed it. I finished 2 weeks early, 8% under budget, and the client was so happy they immediately hired me for their next location. During this time, I rarely spoke to my family. Dad would occasionally call to see when I was going to come to my senses and return to the family business. Ryan never called. He was probably too busy playing CEO. Mom would try to guilt me into coming to family dinners. "Your father misses you," she'd say. "This whole thing is just about pride. You boys should work together." But I was no longer interested in working together. I wanted to prove a point. The big break happened about 18 months after I started Pinnacle. I had been building relationships with general contractors who handled huge commercial projects, positioning myself as a reliable subcontractor for specialty work. One of them came to me with a massive project, a $2.8 million renovation of a corporate headquarters downtown. It was exactly the type of job Harrington and Sons had always wanted but was never qualified for. Complex mechanical systems, high-end finishes, crazy deadlines, and a perfectionist client. I spent 3 weeks putting together my bid, including cost estimates down to the last cent, a complete project timeline, comprehensive quality control systems, and references from every major job I'd done. When I submitted it, I knew it was perfect. I landed the job. More importantly, I had underbid Harrington & Sons by $200,000 and offered a faster completion time. The general contractor later told me that Harrington & Sons' proposal looked amateurish compared to mine. "Your documentation was incredible," the man said. "Their bid was basically a number on a napkin with a handshake." That's when I knew I had Dad right where I wanted him. The downtown headquarters project made my reputation. Not only did I execute it flawlessly, but I finished ahead of schedule and under budget. The client was so impressed he hired me for 2 more locations. The general contractor started referring me for other big jobs. Within 6 months of finishing that project, Pinnacle Construction Solutions had 15 employees and $8 million in signed contracts. Meanwhile, Harrington & Sons was struggling. I wasn't directly competing with them at first. I was chasing bigger, more complex projects they couldn't handle anyway. But my success started to affect their reputation through comparison. Potential. Clients would say, "We heard about this new company, Pinnacle Construction Solutions. They did that amazing headquarters renovation downtown. We're thinking of going with them instead." Contractors who used to use Harrington & Sons for their specialty work started choosing my company. Suppliers started giving me better terms because my payments were more consistent and my volume was growing faster. The final blow came when I started targeting Harrington & Sons' core clients directly. I had spent 15 years building relationships with their customers. I knew exactly what they valued, what frustrated them about working with Harrington & Sons, and what they'd pay more for. I put together proposals that addressed every single one of their concerns. Thompson Industries had been with Harrington & Sons for 8 years. They did about $300,000 in building maintenance and repair work each year, a steady source of revenue for Dad. I set up a meeting with their facilities manager, a guy I'd worked with dozens of times. "Mark," he said when I walked into his office, "I heard you started your own company. How's that going?" "Really well," I replied. "In fact, that's why I'm here. I know you've been happy with Harrington & Sons, but I wanted to show you what we could do differently." I presented a detailed facilities management proposal unlike anything Harrington & Sons had ever offered. Instead of just reacting to problems as they came up, I proposed a proactive maintenance system with predictive scheduling, detailed reports, and guaranteed response times. More importantly, I promised to do it for 15% less than they were paying Harrington & Sons while providing better service. "This is impressive," the facilities manager said, flipping through my presentation. "Harrington & Sons never gave us this level of documentation and planning." "We're not Harrington & Sons," I corrected him. "We're focused on solving problems, not just throwing labor at them." 2 weeks later, Thompson Industries ended their contract with Harrington & Sons and signed with Pinnacle. That was just the beginning. Over the next 8 months, I systematically went after every one of Harrington & Sons' key clients. I didn't compete on price alone. I competed on value, offering services that Harrington & Sons were either unable or unwilling to provide. Advanced project management software that let clients track progress in real time. Detailed cost reports that showed exactly how their money was being spent. Guaranteed completion dates with penalties if we were late. Quality assurance processes that prevented the expensive errors that had hurt some of Harrington & Sons' recent projects. One by one, Harrington & Sons' biggest clients switched to Pinnacle Construction Solutions. Riverside Manufacturing, $500,000 a year, gone. Central Medical Group, $400,000 a year, gone. Brookstone Property Management, $600,000 a year, gone. Each time a client moved, I made sure to send Dad a polite little thank you note, promising to take good care of our mutual associates. The calls from Mom got more frequent. "Your father's worried about the business," she'd tell me. "Some of his oldest clients have left, and he thinks someone is spreading rumors about the company." I never told her it was me. I figured he'd eventually figure it out. He did. The confrontation happened on a Tuesday afternoon in March. I was in my office, a real office now, 3,000 square feet with a conference room and space for 20 employees, when my receptionist called. "Mark, a Robert Harrington is here to see you. He says he's your father." I smirked. "Send him back." Dad walked into my office looking like he'd aged 5 years in the 2 years since I'd left Harrington and Sons. His face was flushed, his hands were shaking a little, and he had that look he used to get when a job went terribly wrong. "You son of a bitch," he yelled before he even got through the door. "Nice to see you too, Dad. Please, have a seat." He didn't sit. Instead, he stood in front of my desk, staring around my office like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Thompson Industries, Riverside Manufacturing, Central Medical. You've been stealing my clients." "I haven't stolen anyone," I said without emotion. "I've been offering better service at competitive prices. Last I checked, that's called business." "Business? This is sabotage. You're trying to destroy everything I built." I leaned back in my chair and looked at him. "I'm not trying to destroy anything, Dad. I'm just showing the market what real construction management looks like." His expression changed. "Real construction management? You think you know something about construction that I don't? I do. I know how to use technology to boost efficiency, how to give clients full transparency, and how to consistently deliver projects on time and on budget. And I guess Ryan doesn't know any of that." I smiled. "How is Ryan, by the way? I heard Harrington and Sons lost the Riverside manufacturing contract. That must hurt." Dad clenched his jaw. "We're fine." "Are you? Because from what I hear, you've lost about $2 million in annual revenue over the last 8 months, which must be putting a strain on cash flow." The truth was, I knew exactly how Harrington and Sons was doing. Construction is a small world in our area, and word gets around. Dad was struggling to make payroll, had laid off 6 employees, and was behind on payments to several suppliers. "You planned this," Dad said, his voice softer now. "This whole thing. You planned to destroy my company." "I plan to build a better company," I countered. "If that happens to put pressure on Harrington and Sons, well, that's the free market at work." Dad finally sank into the chair across from my desk. For the first time since he walked in, he looked defeated, not angry. "Why?" he asked. "I gave you a job, taught you the business, treated you like family." "Treated me like family?" I laughed. "Dad, you told me I wasn't man enough to run the business. You gave everything to Ryan without even considering what I contributed. You made it clear that in your eyes, I'd never be anything more than a support guy." "I was just trying to be realistic about your strengths and weaknesses." "No," I said, standing up and walking around my desk. "You were playing favorites just like you always did. Ryan was the golden boy who could do no wrong, and I was the disappointing son who didn't measure up to your idea of what a man should be." I gestured around my office. "Well, this is what your not man enough son built. Pinnacle Construction Solutions did $12 million in revenue last year. We're on track for $18 million this year. We employ 28 people, and every single one of them makes more money than they would at Harrington and Sons." Dad stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "How?" he asked. "By doing everything you said couldn't be done. By using technology instead of fighting it. By giving clients transparency instead of asking them to trust us blindly. By treating our employees like professionals instead of like laborers who should be grateful for whatever we give them." I sat back down. "You know what the funny thing is, Dad? I learned all of this working for you. Every mistake Harrington and Sons made, every inefficiency, every client complaint, I was paying attention. I was learning what not to do." Dad was silent for a long time. Then he asked, "What do you want?" "I want you to admit you were wrong. I want you to acknowledge that I was man enough to run the family business and that your precious golden boy, Ryan, isn't. Mark, how is Ryan doing as president, by the way? Is he commanding all that respect you were so worried about? Dad's silence told me everything I needed to know. Let me guess, I added. Half the crew thinks he's an idiot. The other half doesn't respect him because they know he only got the job because he's your son. Suppliers don't trust him to make decisions because he doesn't understand the numbers. Clients are frustrated because he overpromises and underdelivers. It's been an adjustment period, Dad said softly. An adjustment period, Dad? It's been 2 years. If Ryan was going to figure it out, he would have by now. I opened my laptop and turned it toward him. Want to see something interesting? This is a financial analysis my accountant ran comparing Harrington & Sons' performance over the past 2 years versus the 2 years before that. The spreadsheet showed everything. Revenue down 35%. Profit margins dropped from 12% to 3%. Client. Retention dropped from 85% to 60%. The average project completion time increased by 20%. These aren't just bad numbers, Dad. They're a disaster. Ryan isn't just failing to grow the business. He's actively destroying it. Dad stared at the screen as if it were his death certificate. Meanwhile, I said, opening another spreadsheet, Pinnacle's numbers look like this. Revenue growth of 400% year over year. Profit margins of 18%. Client retention of 95%. Average project completion time 15% faster than the industry standard. I'm not just man enough to run a construction business, Dad. I'm better at it than you ever were. That broke him. Dad buried his head in his hands and started to cry. I had never seen him cry before, not even when his own father died. I'm sorry, he mumbled. I was wrong about you. I was wrong about everything. As I watched him break down, I felt a mix of victory and sorrow. This was what I had been looking for. Acknowledgement, vindication, proof that I was right all along. But watching my father cry in my own office didn't feel as good as I expected. It's too late for apologies. Dad, the damage is done. He looked up at me, tears still in his eyes. What can I do? How can I fix this? You can't. Harrington & Sons is finished. Even if you fired Ryan tomorrow and begged your old clients to come back, they're not going to trust you again. You had your chance to do things right, and you chose favoritism over competence, Dad. Wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. What's going to happen to the company? To Ryan? I honestly don't care what happens to Ryan. He made his bed when he went along with your plan to push me out. As for the company, I imagine you'll have to sell whatever assets you can and pay off your debts. If you're lucky, you might avoid personal bankruptcy. And then what? I'm 62 years old, Mark, and this is all I know. For a moment, I considered hiring him. Even though he was a terrible businessman, he was still a decent construction supervisor. But then I remembered all the years I was told I wasn't man enough. All the praise heaped on Ryan while my achievements were ignored. All the hurt and anger that had brought me to this very moment. I guess you'll figure it out, I said. You're a smart guy. You'll adapt. Dad stood up slowly, like everything hurt. I guess I deserve this. You do, I replied. But for what? It's I didn't do this to hurt you. I did it to prove you wrong. He nodded and started toward the door. He stopped and turned back. For what it's worth, son, I'm proud of what you've built here. I should have seen it sooner. Yeah, was all I said. You should have. After he left, I sat in my office for a long time, thinking about everything that had happened. I had everything I wanted. Confirmation that I was better than Ryan, Dad's admission that he was wrong, and the satisfaction of watching Harrington & Sons fall. But I also felt empty, like I had won a fight that didn't matter anymore. That was 3 months ago. Harrington & Sons filed for bankruptcy last month. Dad had to liquidate the company's assets to pay off creditors. Ryan is now working for one of our competitors, making about half of what he used to and probably getting the respect he deserves. Dad sometimes calls me to see if there's any work available at Pinnacle. I haven't hired him yet, but I'm thinking about it. When he's not trying to play favorites, he's actually a good manager. Who knew? The funny thing is, Ryan called me last week, the first time we'd spoken since I quit Harrington & Sons. "Mark," he said, "I want to apologize. I should have stood up for you with Dad. I knew you were better at the business side than me, but I was selfish and let him play favorites. A little late for that, don't you think?" "Yeah, probably. But I wanted you to know that you were right. I wasn't ready to run that company. I'm not sure I'll ever be ready to run a company." "So, what are you going to do now?" "I don't know. Maybe go back to school, try to learn some of the stuff you tried to teach me. Maybe see if you'd be willing to hire me at Pinnacle." I chuckled. "You want to work for me? I want to learn how to do things right. And you're the only person I know who actually knows how to run a construction business." I haven't decided what to tell him yet. Part of me thinks it would be satisfying to have my golden boy brother working for me and maybe learning some humility, but part of me thinks it's better to just leave the past behind. Right now, my main focus is on growing Pinnacle. We'll be bidding on a $15 million hospital renovation project next month. The kind of job that Harrington & Sons would never have been qualified for, and the type of challenge that makes me want to get out of bed in the morning. Mom still invites me to family dinners, but things have changed dramatically. Instead of talking about Ryan's latest accomplishments, everyone asks me about my company, my expansion plans, and my thoughts on the construction industry. It feels strange to be the successful son after being the disappointment for so long, but I'll take it. The funniest part is that Dad's old colleagues and business contacts now suddenly refer to me as the one who truly understands construction, as if they'd always known I was the smart one, not the guy who wasn't man enough to run a construction company. I guess the moral of the story is that sometimes you have to burn everything down to prove you were right all along. It's not the most mature way to do it, but it sure feels good. Update. Dad started working for me as a project supervisor 3 weeks ago. On his first day, he pulled me aside and said, "I want you to know you're the boss here. No special treatment, because I'm your father. If I mess up, fire me." So far, he's been great. When he's not trying to play favorites with his sons, he's actually a good manager. Who knew? Ryan is still thinking about whether he wants to join Pinnacle. I told him that if he's serious, he'll have to start at the bottom as a general laborer. Maybe he can work his way up to crew chief if he proves himself. No shortcuts this time.